John is fixated on and what he's trying to point to in his signs, and what the whole point of this whole thing is that Jesus is an entirely new category that has not existed in the world before him. Jesus is 100% God and 100% man, not 50-50, not one compromised to the other and vice versa. He is 100% fully both. And inside himself, he is in total peace. He's not in war internally. God and man dwelling together in harmony and in fullness. This has not existed before Jesus comes upon the scene.
You're listening to the Chapel Sermon Podcast. The Chapel is a non-denominational Christian church welcoming people of all faiths or of no faith background at all. Our desire is that you encounter the presence of God wherever you are in your life. Today's sermon is brought to you by one of our campus pastors, Putty Putman.
Everyone, I am Putty Putman. I'm the Hinsdale campus pastor, and this morning I am here with greetings and blessings from our southernmost campus. It is really wonderful to have the chance to be here together today. I recently had the chance to spend just a little bit of time in the UK. And while I was there were a group of us, and we had the experience that is very common over there and a little bit less common here. We had to learn how to use public transportation to get around. And I think I'll probably always remember the day we walked into a train station because we had tickets to go from London to another town. I think it was Ashford in England. And so we walk into the train station. This is Waterloo train station. We already have our tickets. We bought them online. But we walk into what I now know is the busiest train station in London. And I look up and I see what I'm gonna have to decode to figure out how to get where we're going. I'm greeted by this dashboard, okay? This is what it looks like. That's actually not even half of it. There's like 25 plus screens that each have like the platform and the city and the departure time and all of this. And we look at our tickets and we realize there's no platform listed. We're gonna have to find the platform based on where the train is going. And so we pull out the tickets, what town are we going to? And we sit there and we read across the top of each one of the things, and we realize our town is not any of those 25 plus listed on top. And for a second, we kind of panic and we're like, oh my goodness, are we in the right place? We've never really done this before. Maybe there's another train station down the road we're supposed to go to. And so we panic a little bit, and then we realize that there's the top town, which is the final destination. And underneath that is every other stop along the train. And they all have like 10 to 15 stops. And we realize, oh, our town is somewhere down one of these lists. And so we're confronted by this matrix of like 300 train stops, and we have to figure out where on this whole like mess is the town that we're trying to get to. And so we check our time. How long do we have before the train leaves? Oh no, we better get to this. And we start reading frantically as fast as we can. Fortunately, we found it. Fortunately, we got to the platform right on time. Everything turned out okay. That was our first experience there. We wound up going through there a bunch of times, and what was fascinating was by the end of the trip, how much competence we had gained for something that felt so mysterious the first time we walked in. We walk in, we're like, oh yeah, I know how this works. Okay, there we go, we're good to go, boom. And we left feeling like, man, we can get around the trains in London. Like, I'm good to go, we can totally do this. It was surprising to see how much we moved from confusion to competence by being trained by the signs. Signs are important. They're critical for getting us where we need to go if we're somewhere we've never been before, and doubly so if we're trying to go somewhere we've never been before. And I think Jesus knows this. Of course he knows this. And Jesus is trying to take us somewhere we've never been before, a kingdom-filled life. He's bringing us into new territory, and part of what he does is in his ministry, he includes signs that are meant to train us how to operate in this unfamiliar territory and to move us from like, how does this work? This feels foreign, this feels confusing, into, hey, you know what? I can do this journey with God. This can work. I can get it. This is what his signs are for. In the Gospel of John, John reflects on some of these signs towards the end of the book. And he says this. He says, now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. So like, I love that. He just acknowledged, he goes, look, Jesus did a lot, okay? He did more than I have space to write down. So he did a ton, but I caught some of it. These are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing, you may have life in his name. John points out, he goes, hey, the ones I picked on purpose. And they're to help us point to an important reality that we grasp, which is threefold. He goes, I want you guys to know, I want you to read the signs and to discover, 1, Jesus is the Christ, 2, Jesus is the Son of God, and to believe those things to the outcome of 3, that we may have life in his name. Now, what does that mean? What do those look like? I want to unpack that for just a moment before we dive into the sign we're going to explore today. The first thing John says is he says, Jesus is the Christ. Now, Christ is a Greek word. The Hebrew equivalent would be the word Messiah. And what the idea contained in this term is something like anointed ruler. And to understand what's happening here, we have to understand just a little bit about the context and the culture that Jesus was in. In the time of Jesus, the Jewish people had been subjugated by foreign powers, and they had been under foreign powers like ruling over them for over 500 years. 500 years is a long time. 500 years ago from today was 1522, right? That's a very long time. But in the history of the Jewish people, there was this repeating pattern of God raising up leaders, men and women of God, who would step into moments and they would partner with God to bring his people into their promises. One of the most iconic of them is this guy Moses. God partners with Moses, and Moses goes and he challenges the foreign oppressor of the day. The exact same situation that the Jews are in when Jesus shows up. He challenges the foreign oppressor of the day, let my people go. And there's 10 plagues and there's this whole showdown. But the outcome is that God's people are delivered from the oppression of the foreign rule. A couple of centuries after that, about 5 centuries after that, there's this other guy, David, who God raises up, this incredible anointed king, and he leads Israel into being the prosperous envy of all the nations in the earth. These are men and women that God has raised up, and what the Jews realize, and they see coming through the prophecies in the Old Testament, is that they need another Moses. They need another David. They need someone who God's gonna anoint, who's gonna bring them out of captivity into freedom and lead them into the promises that God has over them as a people. And so they're looking for a kind of turbocharged Moses plus David. That's who the Messiah is. But Jesus is not just the Messiah, he's the Son of God. What does that term mean? Well, the term Son of God points to divinity. In the Old Testament, there's actually these characters called the sons of God. And they're these divine beings which get themselves in some mischief and wind up being eventually related to the lowercase g gods of the nations that are actually worshiped by all the people around Israel, which the Israelites are taught like, that's not good, don't worship them, worship the one true God. So this term, sons of God, is connected to these divine beings. And Jesus is not just a son of God, he is the unique Son of God. And so we have Jesus as the Christ, we have Jesus as the Son of God, and by believing in those things, we are brought to life in his name. We're gonna sort of explore that one as we make our way through the sign. But I wanna cue those up so that we can be looking for both of those categories and what they mean as we make our way through this story. So with that, shall we turn to John 5 and look at the next sign that John records? Here's how it reads, starting at the very top of the chapter. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which, little side note, Bethesda means house of mercy or house of grace, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool and stirred the water. Whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was healed of whatever disease he had. Okay, here's the context. The context is Jesus shows up at this place that is filled with hopelessness and brokenness. This is a place where all the people who are blind, who are lame, who have these incurable diseases and don't have any hope, and so are both, number one, at the end of their course in life. My life is never gonna progress past this. And societal outcasts. I'm rejected because of my condition. All of these people come together in this one place that's called the house of mercy or the house of grace. And what happens is in this place, there's a bunch of colonnades and there's this pool. And from time to time, an angel comes down and stirs up the water in the pool. And when that happens, everybody rushes into the pool, tries to get in there, and the first person who makes their way into the pool gets healed and gets their life back. And so this is this strange experience of like, you have these people who are broken and they're hurting and they have no options. And yet they're holding out just this little bit of hope. Maybe I can be the first one in the pool. Maybe I can get some healing. This is the place where Jesus shows up. And the next verse is a little detail. It might seem random, but it's actually really important. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. Now, when I read that number 38, what tends to come to mind for me is, that's a long time. It's 2 years short of 40. This dude spent most of his life here, right? He spent most of his life hoping, praying, looking for God to do something. That's a tremendously long time. But it's not just a long time, it's a very meaningful amount of time to the Jewish people. You know, if you pull up a Bible app and you search for the number 38, it comes up precisely 2 places in the Bible. This is one of them. And the other one is in Deuteronomy 2. Let's read that real quick. At this point, Moses, he's kind of lecturing Israel on some of their history, all of the Exodus, wandering through the wilderness, etc. And he says this, the time from our leaving Kadesh Barnea until we crossed the brook Zered was 38 years until the entire generation, that is the men of war, had perished from the camp as the Lord had sworn to them. Now, those places, Kadesh Barnea, Brook Zered, probably doesn't mean much. Here's the point. The point is this. Moses saying, look, you remember that thing where we got to the border of the promised land and we sent the spies across and they saw that it was good, but it was also scary. There was giants and stuff. And you remember how we panicked and we didn't really follow God? Yeah, the outcome of that was 38 years in the wilderness. That's actually what Moses says. We got 38 years added to our wilderness journey because of our faithlessness. See, to the Jewish people, that number 38, they would have all known that. We go, oh my gosh, 38, that's so obscure. Putty, some random verse in Deuteronomy? Well, this is their founding story, their founding legacy. And so to them, 38 years is the number of paying the price for my faithlessness. And when Jesus walks up to this man who's been there for 38 years, there's kind of 2 levels of things happening at once. The first is Jesus is coming to a man who's been sick for most of his life, and it's a tragic situation. But the second is that Jesus is coming to a man who is symbolizing the faithlessness of Israel. because Israel was faithless to their God, began worshiping other gods, and that's why they got conquered, and that's why they're now being ruled by foreign powers. And so Jesus is walking up to this man, and this is a real man who needs real healing, but he's also symbolic of Israel itself, who is now wandering in a wilderness saying, God, are you ever gonna come back and deliver us? There's kind of two layers of meaning happening simultaneously. And Jesus is coming to Israel to bring healing and to bring something new. Jesus just might be the Christ. So Jesus, when he had seen him laying there, and he knew he'd already been there a long time, he said to him, do you want to be healed? And the sick man answered him, sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I'm going, another steps down before me. So Jesus goes up to the guy. By the way, we'll find this out a little bit later in the account. The guy doesn't know who Jesus is. So when he says, sir, he's like, he doesn't know who Jesus is. And so Jesus, who's a total stranger to this guy, walks up and goes, hey, do you want to be healed? The guy goes, I'm trying. That's why I'm here. But I'm stuck because every time the angel stirs the water, I can't get down there in time. Somebody else always beats me. And I've been here, insert, and I've been here for 38 years trying. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? First of all, just my heart breaks for this guy. But I think secondly, what's important for us to see is this. This guy had a plan for how to get what he needed to get. He was working the plan of what God was doing. God was involved. God would come, the angel would come down and stir the water. And the guy's like, I'm trying to partner with God. I'm trying to do what God's asking of me. I just can't do it. So that's exactly where Israel was. God, we're trying to partner with you. We want you to come back, but we can't do it. We're overwhelmed by our faithlessness and the consequences thereof. And Israel might even just be a symbol for all humanity, if we're honest. God, all of creation is broken because of our faithlessness to you. And we can't work the solution. We can't make this happen. We can't fix ourselves, God. Even when you're moving, we can't do it, God. We are broken beyond repair. We've tried. How do we do this? Jesus said to him, get up, take your bed and walk. And at once the man was healed and he took up his bed and walked. Now, hold on here, just pause. I have tremendous respect for this guy. I mean, think about it. He spent 38 years of his life trying to work a plan that he knows, he can see other people get healed. He's like, I know this will work if I can do this. And Jesus, a total stranger, walks up to him and he goes, yeah, that's great. Ditch that plan. Let's do something else instead. Jesus doesn't help him in the pool. He doesn't help him work his own plan. Jesus says, we're doing a new plan. We're doing a new thing. Because you know what? That pool was what God was doing. Jesus is now what God is doing. You know, our faith and our obedience and our following of God, they need to get renewed daily. Sometimes the enemy of us partnering with what God is doing now is the fact we're still trying to partner with what he was doing then. Can you imagine? This guy could have said, oh no, I got the plan. Like, I've seen it work. I don't even know who you are. Jesus says, pick up your mat and walk. And the guy does. It's incredible to me. I mean, the dude has more faith than I do. Unbelievable. Now the story turns. Now that day was the Sabbath. And so the Jews said to the man who had been healed, it's the Sabbath. And it's not lawful for you to take up your bed. But he answered them, the man who healed me, that man, he said to me, take up your bed and walk. And they asked him, who's the man who said to you, take up your bed and walk? And now the man who had been healed didn't know who it was. for Jesus had withdrawn and there was a crowd in the place. So the Jews, after this guy gets up, he's carrying his mat, he's walking, and the Jews go, wait a minute, hold on here. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, when this kind of thing happens in the Bible, doesn't it seem really nitpicky? I mean, let's be honest. This dude, he spent almost 40 years of his life trying to get healing. He finally gets healed, and the Jews are like, time out, wrong day of the week. Not good. Doesn't that just seem cruel? Seems heartless to me. Gosh, what's that about? Well, it seems that way to me because I'm not really tracking with everything that the Sabbath meant to the Jewish people. I tend to think of the Sabbath in terms of things like work-life balance and healthy routines and things like that. And that's not bad. It's not bad to think of Sabbath as a practice that fits in that space. But to the Jews, the Sabbath was much more than that. And to see that, let's pop back into the Old Testament one more time. We're gonna look at Exodus this time. In Exodus, some passage, 31, God is talking to Moses and he gives him some instructions about the Sabbath and how to think about it so they can practice it. And the Lord said to Moses, you are to speak to the people of Israel and say, above all, that's an interesting little thought, above all, you shall keep my Sabbaths. For this is a sign, this is an interesting thought there too, sign between me and throughout your generations, that you may know that I, the Lord, sanctify you. The Sabbath is there so that the Israelites know that it's God that makes them holy. Okay, that's interesting. Let's keep going. You shall keep the Sabbath because it's holy for you. Everyone who profanes it, interesting, we're talking about holiness and profaning. That's what's happening here with the Sabbath. Anyone who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does any work on it, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day shall be put to death. The idea that's happening here is not the idea of like personal life rhythms and things like that. What God is saying is he's saying this, look, you guys are my people, and you need to know that the Sabbath belongs to me. The Sabbath is my day. The Sabbath is holy. And if you work on my day, you take something holy and you desecrate it. These are the categories God is talking to. Now, we don't tend to think in terms of holiness and desecration, so just imagine this example, okay? Just kind of hopefully key into the same idea. Imagine one morning, you wind up waking up extra early, but you're not tired, you're energized. And so you're like, this is great, I'm gonna go spend time with the Lord. And you get settled and you're good to go. You turn on some worship music, maybe the new Chapel album that just released like 2 days ago, but that's up to you. And you listen to some worship music and you're worshiping the Lord and you're praying, you're just starting to pour your heart out to the Lord and you're having this beautiful interchange. You have the sense of the Lord's nearness. And then you go and you begin to read your Holy Bible. And as soon as you crack the pages of the Bible, you discover that between the last time you read it and this time, someone has gone and they have cut out a bunch of pieces of paper that are Satanist literature and pornography. And they've glued it to all the pages of the Bible. So you crack open the Bible expecting the holy word of God and you get this instead. Can you imagine how wrong that would feel? Man, this is meant to lead me to God, and it's been made profane. That's the sense that's happening with the Sabbath. When the Jews see this guy carrying this mat, they're like, you can't do that. You're making something holy profane. This is in no way okay. That's actually the sense that's happening here. And so they're kind of freaking out. They're like, dude, who told you to do this? That's totally not okay. He's doing this horrible thing. And he's kind of like, I don't even know, because I didn't catch his name. And so it says afterwards, Jesus found him in the temple. He said to him, look, see you're well. Sin no more that nothing worse may happen to you. And what's he saying by that? He's saying, look, don't slide back into that faithlessness. That faithlessness is kind of what got you there in the first place. I've now set you free. Don't regress. You don't need to do that. And so the man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who healed him. So in this interchange, the guy discovers, oh, you're Jesus. Oh, okay. And so he's telling the Jews, Jesus has healed him. And it says, and this is why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. And so they're like, you're making this holy thing profane. But Jesus answered them, and this is fascinating. Jesus answered them, my Father is working until now, and I am working. You know what Jesus is saying here is so brilliant. I love Jesus. He's phenomenal. Jesus is saying this. He's going, guys, you're missing what's happening here because you're putting me in the wrong place in the picture you've created. Okay? The picture is this. The Sabbath belongs to the Lord, and so it's holy, and we're his people. So we have to respect the Sabbath because the holy God tells us to respect his holy day. And so you're worried because it doesn't look like I'm respecting the Sabbath and I'm one of God's people. But you're missing the point, because the point is the Sabbath is God's day and God can do whatever he wants on the Sabbath. So if God decides he's working on the Sabbath, God can do that. Ta-da! In other words, he's saying the Sabbath is off limits for you. It's not off limits for God. What's the implication? Jesus can work on the Sabbath. Why? Because it's his day. And God can do whatever God wants with God's day. So you know what we see in the sign? We see exactly, interestingly, the two things that John articulated. Jesus is the Christ. He's the Messiah. He's the one who's coming to Israel, calling Israel out of her brokenness and her faithlessness into the promises that he has. And he's doing that as the Son of God. Now here is what's fascinating about the whole thing, and this brings us to John's intended outcome, that we may believe, and in believing have life. One of the things that we may not be tracking with if we've just, if we've heard enough biblical teaching, particularly on Jesus, as the Son of God and all of that, is we may miss the point that the Messiah was never supposed to be God. The Jews, to this day, do not expect the Messiah to be God. They're still looking for a Messiah to come, and they expect him to be a man. They do not expect him to be God. Just like Moses wasn't God, and David wasn't God, and Elijah wasn't God, and no one else who saved Israel was God. And so for Jesus to be the Messiah is for Jesus to be a man. But for Jesus to be the Son of God is for Jesus to be God. And what John is fixated on, and what he's trying to point to in his signs, and what the whole point of this whole thing is that Jesus is an entirely new category that has not existed in the world before him. Because in the world before Jesus, there is God and there is everything else in creation. And God and everything else are like disjoint from one another. The direction that God is going is not the direction that creation is going. And the direction that creation is going is not the direction that God is going. And so there's this tension, and there's at times this animosity and this kind of working against one another that's happening between God and between creation and between man. But Jesus comes as a new category of reality in which God and man, creator and created, are not dissonant from each other. They're not pointed in opposite directions. They're not headed in two different ways. They're instead in this beautiful and full harmony, one completing one another, one fulfilling one another. There's no tension between them. Jesus is 100% God and 100% man, not 50-50, not one compromised to the other and vice versa. He is 100% fully both. And inside himself, he is in total peace. He's not in war internally. God and man dwelling together in harmony and in fullness. This has not existed before Jesus comes upon the scene. And what John is highlighting is he's saying, don't miss the sign. The actual sign here is Jesus. Jesus is the sign that God is doing something entirely new with creation that has not been done before. Something entirely new where he's now fully compatible with creation. It's like a new creation that's happening with Jesus, where now God and man are dwelling in harmony, where I'm not a problem for God and where God's not a problem for me. But there's true peace and there's reconciliation and there's a fullness and a conjoinedness that happens. This is what Jesus embodies in his very being. And so John looks at that and goes, that's the most important thing that exists on the planet right now. That's who Jesus is. And the whole point of this sign, probably the point of every sign, is that this is the Jesus who comes to each of us, who's the man who's been sick for 38 years. All of creation's been paying the price for our faithlessness in the Garden of Eden. All of creation has been in exile, has been living in that tension, and Jesus comes as the answer to that tension, a whole new reality, a whole new life, a whole new way which is distinct from what's been before. And Jesus, as the one with whom divinity and humanity are woven together in perfect harmony, Jesus comes to our broken creation and he simply offers this. He says, hey, do you want to join this party? Here's how it works. All you have to do is respond to me. It doesn't matter to me if you have a plan that you've been trying to work and you can't make it work. It doesn't matter to me if you've made this mess on your own and you're here because you, quote, should be. It doesn't matter to me if you don't even actually know who I am. I don't care about any of that. You know what I care about? That when I say pick up your mat and walk, you do it. That I become the new center of your reality, where you discard all the excuses, you discard all the plans you have, you discard everything else, and you orient your life around me. When you do that, when you believe to the extent that you put feet to something, when you believe that way, what happens is the world that Jesus embodies, a world where creator and created are in harmony, that world swallows you up. And you begin to be part of the world that exists in Jesus. We call it sometimes being born again or being made a new creation. We get swept up into this new category of God and man dwelling together, walking the way we were always meant to walk, and us living in such a way that God's will is done in the world around us. That's what's on the table in Jesus. And the only thing he asks, the only thing, is he says, just say yes to me. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to, I don't care where it came, I don't care about all that stuff. Just give me your yes. If we give God our yes, we find ourselves swallowed up by the place where humanity and divinity are woven together. And that means, and this is what John is saying, that a whole new life is possible. He's not talking about going to heaven. He's talking about the fact that we get to experience the life of eternity in the present. He's saying, if you believe, you join that new creation. And what you'll find is that that new creation has life in it. This is why Jesus says, I am the life. He doesn't say you'll get life. This is the point. The point is that it's Jesus. Jesus is the way of this new reality. Jesus is the truth about this new reality. Jesus is the life that we'll experience in this new reality. Jesus is the one that all of heaven and all of earth are coming together into him. Jesus is the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the one from which it proceeds and the one to which it all ends within. There is only one thing to our faith. It's Jesus. And I think sometimes we can get so caught up on what he says and what he does and what he teaches that we forget who he is. Jesus himself is the sign, and he is the reality that we are invited to. And so I think my question, my challenge maybe for each of us today is this. What mess, maybe of our own making, do we need Jesus to come to? What way that we maybe don't know him yet, but we need to be able to know him? What plan are we trying to work that maybe isn't the plan he's doing anymore? The answer to all of this is Jesus himself. It doesn't get more complicated than that. But what happens is we get deeper and deeper in it. We grow further and further into Jesus. He is all this thing is. But there's an infinite depth to him. So you'll never get to the bottom. What's Jesus coming to you today? How is he coming to you saying, hey, you know what? I know you've got your plan. I know you've got the reason you've been here. I know I don't even make sense to you. I don't care about any of that. Pick up your mat. Let's go. Join my reality. It's open for you if you'll just say yes. Jesus, we love you. We say that we are captivated by who you are. Jesus, we say that you being that joining place where all of heaven and all of earth is coming together, where you are divinity and humanity wrapped in one. God, we say we want to live in that part of the world. You have brought that place to us, God. We want our lives to be rooted there. And God, we just say, would you give us the grace to give our yes to whatever it is you're asking for us? We want to be known as people of belief, God, people who put our feet to what you're asking. And in that, God, we say we are excited to join this new reality you're starting. God, would you open the eyes of our heart to see you in a fresher way? Would we seek first the things that are above, where you are, Jesus, where our life is hidden? We love you, God. Thank you for being the sign. Thank you for coming as the sign. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope this was an encouraging and uplifting experience for you. If you'd like to listen to more of our sermons, you can visit the sermon page of our website at chapel.org for more content. You can also watch our full service content on our YouTube channel, The Chapel Chicagoland.